At the end of the Han dynasty, the world was in turmoil, and social order deteriorated. All over the country, some frivolous youths formed gangs, doing things that were improper and dishonorable. Historical records called this phenomenon Yuxia, or the trend of Qingxia. Many well-known figures of the Three Kingdoms period engaged in such behavior during their youth, such as Sun Jian, Cao Cao, Liu Bei, Gan Ning, Lu Su, Liu Ye, Su Chu, and many others. Tian Chu was one of them. Tian Chou, courtesy name Zitai, was from Wushong in Yubiping. In his early teens, he studied under the local great Confucian Yue Yin. During this period, he had already become a small but famous leader among the so-called gold foil youths. At the same time, Liu Bei was making his way in Zhuo County of Zhuo Commandery, with followers such as his fellow townsmen Zhang Fei and Jian Yong, as well as Guan Yu, who had fled from Xieliang and Heidong to Zhuo County. Liu Bei's family were merely small shoemakers. How did he support the expenses of his group? By collecting protection fees. The largest source of this fee came from two wealthy horse traders of Zhongshan, Zhang Shipping and Su Shuang. In ancient Central Plains China, horse merchants secretly bought horses from the Shanbei and Wuhuan north of Yuzhou, then sold them into the Central Plains for huge profits. Wuzhong of Zhuo Commandery lay directly on the north-south route into the Central Plains. Zhang Shipping and Su Shuang needed to bribe Liu Bei in Zhuo County, and inevitably also had to bribe Tian Chou in Wuzhong. Liu Bei and Tian Chou likely became acquainted through this matter. Historical records note that the bond between Tian Chou and Liu Bei was so close, it was described as friends who would cut their throats for each other. In classical Chinese, the term youth differed from today. In antiquity, all men under the age of 20 before the coming-of-age ceremony were called youths, even up to Liang Qichao's phrase, "If the youth are strong, then China is strong." The word youth referred to those of 18 or 19, not young schoolboys of 10 or so. The phrase, friends who would cut their throats for each other, originated from the story of Lin Shangru and Lian Po of the Warring States, meaning a bond to live and die together, equivalent to not asking to be born on the same day, but only to die on the same day. This shows the depth of Tian Chu's friendship with Liu Bei. Yet despite their strong bond, Tian Chou did not follow Liu Bei in his campaigns because he was called elsewhere. General of chariots and cavalry He Miao, younger brother of Jin, recruited Tian Chu's teacher Yue Yin as a senior aide. Tian Chou followed his teacher to Luoyang. When Yuan Shao purged the eunuchs, He Miao and Yue Yin were killed. Tian Chao and his classmates risked their lives to collect Yue Yin's body. On the road home, they were robbed by mountain bandits. The classmates all fled in fear, but Tian Chou alone faced the bandits, weeping and begging them not to harm his teacher's remains and to allow him to bury him properly. The bandits, moved by his loyalty and filial devotion, let him go. From then on, Tian Chou's name became renowned. When Yuan Shao became governor of Zhizhou, he heard of Tian Chu's fame and appointed him as a military officer commanding Wuhuan cavalry. In the age of cold weapons, cavalry were of extraordinary importance. Their speed and great shock power often determined victory or defeat in battle. The Central Plains lacked horses, cavalry were rare, and having such a force was every warlord's dream. When Cao Cao campaigned south into Jingzhou, Liu Bei fled toward Jiangling. Cao Cao, with his elite tiger and leopard cavalry, pursued furiously and scattered Liu Bei's army at Dangyang, nearly costing Liu Bei his life. That Tian Chou could lead a force of Wuhuan horsemen raised from childhood on horseback showed his remarkable ability, as well as Yuan Shao's trust in and reliance upon him. Tian Chu was also fearless before power and impartial in upholding the law. When Yuan Shao's retainers violated prohibitions, Tian Chou did not hand them over for Yuan Shao to deal with, but executed them outright, then reported it afterward. Because he acted with fairness, Yuan Shao could not blame him. Tian Chou was indeed courageous and far-sighted. After Yuan Shao's death, he followed Yuan Shang, Yuan Shao's son. When Cao Cao attacked Yuan Shao's forces, Yuan Shang sent Tian Chou to Shangdang in Bingzhou to oversee military grain transport. Before the supplies returned, Yuan Shao was defeated by Cao Cao and forced to flee. At that time, Yuan Shao's nephew Gao Gan was inspector of Bingzhou, commanding 50,000 guests and soldiers. Tian Chou urged him to join forces with Yuan Shao, unite their armies, and establish a regional power to await opportunity. Gao Gan refused, likely fearing that if Yuan Shao came, his own leadership position would be endangered, and also worried that Tian Chou would report his actions to Yuan Shao. Thus, he plotted to kill Tian Chou. Tian Chou quickly escaped into exile. Because the road was blocked and he could not reach Yuan Shao, he had no choice but to surrender to Cao Cao. After occupying Jizhou, Cao Cao admired Tian Chou's talents and still appointed him as an officer. When Cao Cao campaigned against Yuan Tan, Tian Chou rendered great service to him, and the process was extremely remarkable. When Yuan Shao was in Hebei, he still maintained good cooperative relations with the northern nomadic tribe of the Shanbei. After Yuan Shao's death, this relationship did not collapse. When Yuan Tan faced danger, the Wuhuan Chanyu of Liu Cheng prepared to dispatch 5,000 cavalry to reinforce Yuan Tan. Because Tian Chou had once commanded Wuhuan cavalry when serving under Yuan Shao and was quite familiar with the Wuhuan people, Cao Cao sent Tian Chou to persuade the Wuhuan Chanyu. He granted him the title of Chanyu and urged him to abandon reinforcing Yuan Tan. When Tian Chou arrived in Liu Cheng, it so happened that Gongsun Kang, the administrator of Liaodong, who had proclaimed himself governor of Yuzhou, also sent an envoy, Han Zhong, to the Wuhuan people to grant the Chanyu title. The previous title had been conferred by Yuan Shao. The Wuhuan Chanyu, facing two sources, was confused and asked Tian Chou, "Previously, Yuan Gong said he was ordered by the Son of Heaven to appoint me as Chanyu. Now Lord Cao says he wants to request the Son of Heaven again to appoint me as the true Chanyu. Liaodong here also brings the seal of the Chanyu to appoint me. Which one is authentic?" Tian Chou explained, "Previously Yuan Gong was punished and he conferred upon you a temporary title of Chanyu. Yuan Gong committed mistakes. Now the Son of Heaven has commanded Lord Cao to replace him, so it is necessary to report again to the Son of Heaven to make you the true Chanyu. This is the authentic one. Liaodong is only a commandery of the court. How could it have the qualification to appoint you as Chanyu?" Han Zhong refused to accept this and argued, "Our Liaodong, east of the Bohai Sea, commands 1,000,000 troops, and we also have the Fuyu and Yemek tribes at our disposal. In the current situation, the strong dominate. What qualification does Cao Cao have to dare act alone like this?" Tian Chou angrily rebuked Han Zhong. "Lord Cao represents the Son of Heaven, punishes rebels, and brings peace to the realm. You ministers are obstinate and arrogant, relying on distant geography, pretending to be exiled, and now want to appoint titles arbitrarily and insult sacred authority. You should rightfully be slaughtered, yet you still dare to slander and defame Lord Cao." Oh, after cursing, Tian Chou was still not appeased. He grabbed Han Zhong's head and smashed it against the ground, then drew his sword to kill him. The Wuhuan Chanyu, so frightened that he did not have time to put on shoes, ran barefoot and hugged Tian Chou, begging him to spare Han Zhong. Everyone present was shocked and terrified. Tian Chou then returned to his seat, spoke reason to the Chanyu, and analyzed the gains and losses, the fortunes and disasters. All the Wuhuan people present, including the Chanyu, left their seats, knelt down, and respectfully received his teachings. After listening, they were completely convinced. They immediately dismissed the envoy from Liaodong and disbanded the cavalry that was already prepared to march. With his own power alone, Tian Chou eliminated the threat of a 5,000-strong cavalry force to Cao Cao, which could be said to be utmost devotion. Tian Chou was also a man of loyalty and righteousness. After Gongsun Kang killed Yuan Shao, he sent his head to Cao Cao. Cao Cao hung this head among the masses of the Ma family and decreed that anyone who dared to grieve over it would be executed. When Tian Chou saw the head of his former master, grief overwhelmed him. He did not hesitate to violate Cao Cao's order and secretly mourned under the head. Cao Cao, moved by his loyalty and righteousness, not only did not blame him but instead recommended him as Mao Kai. Throughout history, under Cao Cao, Cao Pi, and Cao Rui, Tian Shou was a senior statesman of the Wei state for 3 reigns, with distinguished merits, especially in pacifying or resisting the invasions of the Xianbei and Wuhuan. Only Tian Yu surpassed Tian Shou, and Tian Shou once saved Tian Yu's life. That was during the time of Emperor Ming of Wei, when Tian Shou was serving as administrator of Yanmen. Tian Yu, leading a lone army, went far out and was surrounded at Masheng by 30,000 cavalry led by the Xianbei chieftain Kebineng. Tian Yu urgently sought aid from Tian Shou. When Tian Shou received Tian Yu's plea for help, he immediately gathered troops to prepare for rescue. Yanmen commandery belonged to Bing Zhou. The provincial officials, using the regulation that the administrator could not cross borders to campaign, refused to allow Tian Shou to send troops. Tian Shou believed that when a commander of the state was surrounded, it could not be handled according to convention. Since the provincial authorities would not permit the expedition, Tian Shou directly submitted a petition to Cao Rui for dispatching troops. When he set out, he issued proclamations everywhere, declaring he would attack the Xianbei tribes from the northwest, then march east to join Tian Yu and fight the enemy together. Upon hearing the news, Tian Yu's troops were extremely excited and eager to fight. Tian Shou also sent proclamations to the Xianbei garrisons guarding the passes, which filled them with fear and caused them to scatter. The great army that had always been the usual enemy collapsed and fled. Kebineng once again gathered cavalry north of Wuzhou fortress. Tian Shou secretly marched and launched a surprise attack, killing countless enemies. History often plays tricks on people. During Zhuge Liang's 4 northern expeditions, he contacted Kebineng with the intention of launching a pincer attack from north and south. Yet long before that, Tian Shu had already predicted that Zhuge Liang would ally with Kebineng, and he made preparations in advance, successfully organizing against Kebineng. Because of his extraordinary bond with Liu Bei, being friends sworn to life and death, Tian Shao feared being resented by his contemporaries. Therefore, he usually acted with humility and kept a low profile, and so his official career remained stagnant, neither high nor low. In the end, he only became administrator of Yanmen, a post far beneath his abilities. Even Chen Shou, in records of the 3 kingdoms, lamented the injustice to Tian Shou, believing that Cao Wei had failed to truly employ his talents. Liu Bei's first wife's family was too weak, lacking the strength to attract or retain someone like Tian Chu. When Liu Bei took refuge with Yuan Shao, Tian Shao was also there, yet the two did not rekindle their former bond. For Liu Bei, failing to recruit and keep this sworn brother was not only a regret, but also a real loss. In the commanderies of Jizao, one executor named Liu Bei sensed an opportunity. Indeed, this Liu Bei was none other than the future Emperor Zhaoli, founder of Shu Han, but that was still more than 30 years away. At this time, he was merely an ordinary man from Zuo County in Zuo Commandery, within the Han Empire. The empire was in chaos, with yellow turban rebels rising everywhere, while the Imperial Central Army was severely limited. To preserve the localities, the court permitted regions to raise their own troops to defend their lands. When Liu Bei heard this news, he returned home and organized a troop of his own, throwing himself into the grand struggle for dominance. At this point, one might think the story is unremarkable, for heroes often arise in times of chaos. Compared with Yuan Shao, Cao Cao, and other magnates, Liu Bei's raising of troops seemed nothing special, but thinking more deeply, it was not so simple. All beginnings are difficult. Liu Bei was merely a young man in his early 22nd, from a modest family without even an official post. How did he have the charisma to gather a force willing to follow him through life and death? Consider Yuan Shao, whose family had held high office for 4 generations. His father, Yuan Feng, was Minister of Works. His uncle, Yuan Wei, was Minister over the Masses, both equivalent to today's top-level central officials. His other uncle, Yuan Cheng, was Colonel of the Central Army, roughly equal to a modern Major General. The Yuan clan had disciples and retainers across the realm, with power, wealth, and influence. For them, raising an army was only a matter of moments. Cao Cao, not only wealthy himself, already held office as captain of the cavalry during the Yellow Turban Rebellion, commanding the well-equipped Imperial Guards cavalry, equivalent to today's armored regiment commander outside of guard divisions. His starting point was similarly high. What did Liu Bei have? None of the resources of Yuan Shao or Cao Cao, yet he still managed to gather his own troops. Even though the force was poorly equipped and lacking training to be called a troop, it must have been considerable in number. Business requires a first pot of gold. For the self-made Liu Bei, how did he accumulate his first capital in the struggle for empire? The story goes back to his childhood. Liu Bei's ancestors once prospered. He often claimed descent from Liu Sheng, King Jing of Zhongshan in the Western Han. Liu Sheng was mediocre in both civil and military affairs, but he had one talent: fathering children. His sons numbered as many as 120. With so many heirs, the estate was divided again and again, until by the time it reached Liu Bei's generation, likely not even an iron pot remained. Liu Bei's grandfather and father were models of self-reliance. His grandfather, Liu Xiong, known for his virtuous conduct, was recommended as Shaolian, the equivalent of today's model of virtue at the municipal level, and in that era of moral emphasis, he became magistrate of Fan County in Dongjun. His father Liu Hong was less accomplished, but still held a stable clerical post in the county administration. Thus, Liu Bei's family background was not high, but neither destitute. Liu Hong died when Liu Bei was very young, leaving some savings behind. The family also relied on his mother weaving bamboo mats, selling straw sandals, and tending a small garden. So in childhood, Liu Bei lived in relative peace, without want of food or clothing. Growing up long dependent on his mother alone, without a strict father's discipline, a child often develops into one of two extremes, either introverted and withdrawn, or extroverted and sociable. Liu Bei clearly belonged to the latter. In daily life, there are always those who can easily blend in, winning affection and admiration. This is a natural charisma, an innate ability. Liu Bei was outstanding among such people. The Liu clan of Zhuo County, though long in decline, still retained the strength of a great family, able to provide considerable support to Liu Bei and his mother. In the 4th year of Xiping under Emperor Ling of Han, when Liu Bei was 15, through the connections of his clan, he became a student of Liu Ji, governor of Zhujiang and a fellow native of Zhuo Commandery, to study culture and learning. At that time, the Han dynasty had not yet instituted the imperial examinations. The court selected officials through the Chaju system, in which local administrators continually inspected and recommended talents within their jurisdiction, and recommended to higher authorities or the central court. After trial and assessment, they would then be appointed to official posts. Therefore, if one had a famous elder to support him, it was of great help to his attempts. Liu Ji was a renowned scholar of the time, a disciple of the great Confucian Ma Rong, and a fellow student of the master of classical studies Zheng Xuan. His prestige was very high, and he also carried great influence in officialdom. Liu Ji himself served long in various regions as an official and had many students. Naturally, he could not personally teach. He only lent his name to the school, but even so, many families of officials still flocked to him, sending their children to the school that Liu Ji established in Zhuo Commandery to gain prestige. These sons of official families were more like students attending an MBA program, with study as secondary and networking as primary. Most of their classmates were either wealthy or powerful. Compared with them, Liu Bei, whose family background was only modestly well off, was undoubtedly far inferior. Yet he did not become self-abased or withdrawn because of this. Instead, he made use of his talent for social interaction and actively integrated into this circle. When classmates bought fine clothes, he also bought them. When classmates rode fine horses, he also rode them. When classmates hunted with hawks and hounds, he too delighted in the same activities. But with Liu Bei's family situation, could he withstand such lavish spending? The answer was naturally no. Do not forget that his mother was still selling bamboo mats. Moreover, much of his tuition came from the financial assistance of his clansman Lu Duran's father. Yet to Liu Bei, in order to mix into the circle, the hardship of a frugal life was insignificant. Just like that later man of Yuncheng in Shandong who befriended Song Gongming, the elder brother, in time, he did not care how much money he spent, only how many friends he made. The precocious Liu Bei understood early on one principle. As one born from a poor family, if he wanted to rise in the world, he could not waste the hard-won opportunity that his clan had secured for him. Luji's school was the best platform for him to draw close to the children of the upper elite. Compared with bitter study, human connections were more important. While many of his peers were still ignorant and naive, he already acted with a strong sense of purpose. Liu Bei was loyal, magnanimous, and adept at reading expressions. His dealings with people were as gentle as the spring breeze. In this respect, he resembled his ancestor Liu Bang. Whether among commoner warriors or sons of noble families, he could blend with them seamlessly. One day, he would help a brother from the eastern city pay the funeral expenses for his deceased parents. The next day, he would gather his companions to teach a lesson to a bully who had tormented a powerless scholar from the western city. Gradually, his reputation spread. Not only did the young men of Qingxia consider it an honor to know him, but the children of high officials also regarded him as a trustworthy companion. His close friends included street heroes like Zhang Fei, noble youths like Jian Yong and Tian Chu, and wandering knights like Guan Yu. Heroes of all kinds, regardless of status, became his associates. Moving deftly among people of various backgrounds, Liu Bei was at ease. So much so that in Zhuo Commandery, whenever Lu Xuande was mentioned, everyone raised their thumbs and praised him as a true hero. Of course, beyond casting a wide net to expand his influence, Liu Bei also carefully cultivated relations with some key figures. Among these was the later famous White Horse General, Gongsun Zan. Gongsun Zan's father was an official at the rank of administrator, roughly equivalent to a modern-day mayor. As the son of a mayor, Gongsun Zan's status was far above Liu Bei's. However, Gongsun Zan did not live comfortably, for his mother was not his father's principal wife of proper marriage, but most likely a servant girl who unexpectedly became pregnant and gave birth to Gongsun Zan. Because his mother's status was low, Gongsun Zan was not favored by his father and was looked down upon by those who knew the truth. He could only serve as a minor official, a scribe, under the county magistrate of his native Liaoxi commandery. However, he was handsome, had a fine and sharp voice, and was eloquent. He won the special regard of the administrator of Liaoxi commandery, who even married his daughter to him. From then on, Gongsun Zan's fate began to change. Perhaps thinking that for further advancement his qualifications were insufficient, the administrator later arranged for Gongsun Zan to attend Luji's school for further study, where he encountered Liu Bei. Because of his special experiences, although he was the son of a mayor, Gongsun Zan did not regard himself as the same as those privileged sons of the elite. Instead, he had considerable sympathy for a fallen noble like Liu Bei, feeling that they were both people cast adrift in the world and thus cherished each other. Their friendship grew daily. Gongsun Zan was older and stronger, and Liu Bei knew it was impossible to take Gongsun Zan as a subordinate, so he simply acknowledged him as elder brother, and they called each other brothers, further strengthening their bond. Liu Bei made many acquaintances and was skilled at judging character. The reason he strove so hard to build ties with Gongsun Zan was only because he had a premonition. Gongsun Zan was very likely to become an important stepping stone in Liu Bei's network in the future. As a local power in Zhuo Commandery, Liu Bei held sway over both the underworld and officialdom, and his standing in society grew day by day. Thus, he befriended many figures of influence. Horse traders from Zhongshan, such as Zhang Xiping and Su Shuang, often came to Zhuo Commandery to do business, and inevitably had to deal with the local powers. On several occasions when they encountered trouble, it was Liu Bei who stepped in to mediate. Over time, they became friends. Liu Bei gave them protection, while they occasionally offered him gifts in return. From then on, Liu Bei not only had social standing, but also protection fees as a source of income, and his days were prosperous. For several years, Liu Bei seemed like an idle gang leader, unconcerned with proper business. But in reality, he was diligently accumulating social resources, waiting for the day when his preparation would allow him to rise. When the Yellow Turban Rebellion erupted, he keenly sensed the time was ripe. He first sought out Zhang Shiping and Su Shuang, inviting them to invest money. When they asked what they were investing in, Liu Bei replied solemnly with just 2 words, "The realm." The two were shocked, never imagining that this young man who had lived so long among the streets harbored such lofty ambitions, but since the matter was grave, they hesitated. Liu Bei, however, had made preparations. At his command, dozens of loyal Qingsha youths rode forth, shouting thunderously that they were willing to die for Liu Bei. Faced with such might, and seeing Liu Bei himself standing tall and upright like a mountain, faintly emanating a kingly aura, Zhang Shiping and Su Shuang no longer doubted. They immediately offered their wealth to help Liu Bei raise troops and purchase horses. With their initial investment, combined with the prestige Liu Bei had long built in Zhuo Commandery, his call was answered widely, and he quickly raised a considerable force. At that moment, Colonel of the Broken Bandits Zhu Jing, commissioned by the Inspector of Yuzhou, was recruiting soldiers in Zhuo Commandery. Liu Bei seized the opportunity, leading his troops to join him. In an instant, he transformed from a local band into part of the Imperial Regular Army. Soon after several battles against the Yellow Turbans, he gained some achievements and became a junior officer, officially beginning his military career. His long-term accumulation of connections and his ability to seize opportunity helped Liu Bei rise from a street rogue to an officer in the Han Dynasty's military structure. Though he was only at the very bottom of the ranks, from this point onward he walked a path utterly different from that of his ancestors and father. Over 4 years, the Empire of Han was torn to pieces by the Yellow Turban chaos. Fighting under Zhu Jing, Liu Bei engaged the rebels countless times, gaining many small merits, yet always lacking a great victory that could pave the way for his promotion. Compared with young talents of reputation such as Yuan Shao, Cao Cao, or Sun Jian, his status was still humble. But soon, a new opportunity arose. In the 4th year of Zhongping under Emperor Ling, not far from Zhuo Commandery in the state of Zhongshan, Chancellor Zhang Chun saw that the central plains were troubled by the Yellow Turbans, while in the northwest, Bianzhang, Ma Teng, and Han Sui were rebelling with the Chang, and along the borders, the Wuhuan and Xianbei were watching eagerly. Believing that the Han Empire was doomed, he conspired with former Taishan governor Zhang Ju and invited Qiu Li Ju, chieftain of the Wuhuan, to join in rebellion. Liu Bei participated in the campaign to suppress the revolt of Zhang Chun and his allies and earned considerable merit. Afterward, combining his record of service, he was appointed commandant of Anxi County, parting ways with Zhu Jing. This should have been an excellent beginning, giving Liu Bei, long dependent on others, the chance to develop independently. But by then, the Yellow Turban Rebellion was gradually subsiding. The court realized that uprisings across the land were all connected to privately raised armies, and fearing that local powers would grow uncontrollable, it issued orders that all those who had become officials through military merit must disband their private troops. Just as Liu Bei entered Anxi County with Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, and his sworn brothers eager to embark on great undertakings, he heard this news and his heart sank. Through the years, he had learned the vital importance of people. He said to Guan Yu and Zhang Fei, "Without the loyal following of my brothers, without your willingness to risk everything and shed blood, there would be no Liu Bei of today. If the court now demands that I abandon my brothers, then this position of commandant of Anxi is not worth holding." With that, he burst into the office, seized the inspector who had come to oversee the disbanding, tied him up and beat him, then took his brothers, cast aside his seal, and fled into exile. Zhang Fei wept, asking his elder brother why he would give up the hard-won honor for the sake of just a few men. Liu Bei only shook his head resolutely and said, An official position lost could still be regained, but a lifelong brotherhood, once missed, could never be found again. Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, and the other old brothers were moved to tears on the spot, vowing resolutely that from this life onward, their lives would belong to Liu Bei with unshakable loyalty. Fortunately, the violent act in Liu Bei's office was quickly overshadowed by other great events in the chaos of the time. Wandering from place to place, Liu Bei arrived in Danyang Commandery. Hearing that several officials there were recruiting troops, he led his brothers to join. When the army marched to Xiapi, they encountered bandits. Liu Bei distinguished himself in battle and was appointed assistant magistrate of Xiapi County. But by now, Liu Bei's ambitions were no longer what they once had been. A minor post could be lost as easily as it was gained. How could a mere county office restrain him? Liu Bei had his considerations. Guan Chu Yi, the man in charge, had strong connections, being a trusted follower of General-in-Chief He Jin. He Jin's younger sister was Empress He, the second wife of Emperor Ling Luhong, and deeply favored. Because of his sister's position, He Jin became the most powerful relative by marriage at court. During the most rampant years of the Yellow Turban Uprising, He Jin presided in the capital, and even Yuan Shao and Cao Cao once served under him. If Liu Bei could climb this tree of He Jin and perform well, his prospects for promotion were still great. Liu Bei clearly saw the situation. In this age of rising warlords, skill alone was less useful than having a powerful elder brother. When he had once studied under Liu Ji, he had tasted the benefits. Now, by attaching himself to He Jin, he sought once again to mix into the circle. But before he could even begin, disaster struck. He Jin, like a clay Buddha crossing the river, could not save himself. Liu Bei had happily gone to assume office in Xiapi, but soon dire news came. In political strife, He Jin, who planned to exterminate the eunuchs, was instead killed by them. Then Dong Zhuo of Bingzhou, taking the omen as his chance, led his troops into the capital Luoyang. He Jin's partisans fled or were slain, their power utterly destroyed. Liu Bei saw the danger clearly, feared being implicated and suppressed, and voluntarily resigned his office. Afterward, he roamed with his brothers, serving as mercenaries for a time. Finally, at the age of 30, he was appointed magistrate of Gaotang County in Qinghe Commandery, Jizhou. But the good times did not last. Following the Yellow Turbans, the Black Mountain rebels in Jizhou rose in massive rebellion, joining with the remnants of the Yellow Turbans, gathering more than 100,000 to besiege cities and seize lands. Gaotang County could not escape. Though Liu Bei and his brothers were brave, they were outnumbered. They had to abandon Gaotang and retreat, once again losing their base. Feeling nearly cornered, Liu Bei suddenly remembered his good brother Gongsun Zan. Having returned from Lu Ji's school to his home in Liaozi, Gongsun Zan was soon recommended as filial and incorrupt, sent to serve as an official in Liaodong Commandery. In campaigns against the Wuhuan and Shanbei tribes he excelled, gaining the title of White Horse General. Later, in suppressing Jiang Chun's rebellion and crushing the Yellow Turbans, he achieved great feats of arms. His strength spoke for itself, and the court ennobled him as General of Resolute Might and Marquis of Yi, rising swiftly to power as a regional warlord. Liu Bei indeed had not misjudged him. Knowing his younger brother was struggling, Gongsun Zan immediately petitioned the court to grant Liu Bei an office. Gongsun Zan was then a favorite of the court, relied upon to secure the northern frontier, so naturally his requests were granted. Considering Liu Bei's past merits, the court appointed him Bibu Sima, a military office. Bibu Sima was a kind of command post. In the chaos of the time, various clans and powerful families each raised troops, which were essentially their private armies under the nominal banner of the court. Because the size of these forces varied, the authority of a Bibu Sima was flexible, but it was effectively a recognition of private troops' legitimacy. Though not a high post, it was far more practical than a county office. Finally, through persistence, Liu Bei could openly and justly lead his brothers in roaming the realm. With Gongsun Zan's help, Liu Bei reaped great benefits from his early investment in human connections. He suddenly realized that his old brother Gongsun Zan had already grown into a towering tree, and he resolved to follow him closely. Full of vigor, Gongsun Zan was then contending with Yuan Shao, governor of Jizhou, for supremacy of the province. Their armies clashed repeatedly. In the campaigns against Yuan Shao, Liu Bei often distinguished himself. With Gongsun Zan recommending him, Liu Bei was promoted nearly every time he gained merit, and was successively appointed magistrate of Pingguan and then chancellor of Pingguan. The Han dynasty operated under the dual system of commanderies and kingdoms. Commanderies had governors, while kingdoms had chancellors. As chancellor of Pingyuan, Liu Bei held power equivalent to a regional lord. In his early 30s, he had finally surpassed the achievements of his ancestors and father. Many years later, someone asked Liu Bei how he had managed, starting with nothing, to succeed among the warlords. Liu Bei smiled lightly and said, "You think I had nothing, but you do not see that I had what many could never obtain, my first bucket of gold. Though my starting point was low, for that first bucket of gold I had quietly prepared for more than 10 years. That gold was human connections. It is more precious than all the wealth of the world. Could a golden carp remain forever in the pond? When the winds and clouds change, it becomes a dragon. Above, I had Gongsun Zan to support me. Below, I had Guan Yu and Zhang Fei to risk their lives for me. The network of relationships I had cultivated back in Zhuo Commandery now all came into play." And thus Liu Bei formally took his first step toward contending for dominion over the realm, winning people's hearts and establishing his virtue, ruling by moral force.